What's a genuinely scary thing you've encountered that still haunts you to this day? I went round my grandma's house. She lives alone. We were chatting at the gate before I left when I got the feeling we were being watched. So I looked up and saw an old lady standing at the bedroom window looking at us and waving. It terrified me. I told my grandma to look up, but when she did, the woman was gone. I described the woman to my grandma, and she said casually, "Oh, that's my grandma." I saw a man in the distance get impaled Final Destination style by a falling part from a crane. It still gives me chills. I've witnessed a crane accident, and it's scary. Lucky for him, he wasn't killed or seriously maimed. Just a few broken ribs and a concussion. What happened was, he didn't rig the hook correctly because he was working fast and not paying attention. So, a 30-ton trailer went up and started to move, then slipped off the chain. It swung down and ragdolled his ass all the way across the floor, like a fly getting hit with a baseball bat. He flew into a tool chest and just laid there on the floor. The fucked up part was, after being taken to the ER, management wrote him up when he returned the next day for a safety violation. More like an LNI retaliation, if you ask me. I'm not superstitious by any means. I don't believe in paranormal stuff or creatures like Bigfoot, etc. But this one I legitimately cannot explain. I grew up in northern MN, and I used to explore the woods all around our house basically every day. One fall day when I was 12, my golden retriever and I went on our usual adventures way back in the woods. We had walked pretty deep into the forest when suddenly my dog stopped in her tracks and did the deepest guttural growl I have ever heard her make. I followed her stare, and about 50 feet away was a jet-black creature. Bigger than a wolf, smaller than a black bear. We had lots of those around. I'd see them often, and this was not a bear. It bolted away from us slightly at an angle, and it moved faster than any animal I have ever seen. And it had no gait, it just moved. I don't know how to explain it. It was so fast, I couldn't make out any defining features, just this black, shapeless thing. It disappeared over a hill, and my dog whimpered and dragged me in the opposite direction, which was not like her at all. We booked it back home. I was terrified. 2 weeks later, I saw it again. This time outside my house in the bushes on the opposite side of the road, and it took off as quickly as I'd seen it. I have spent endless hours researching what it could be, from animals to native legends to everything imaginable, and I have no answer. It still freaks me out so much. The decline of my grandpa, who had Parkinson's with Lewy body dementia. That man was the absolute paragon of dependability and care. So much so that his 4 brothers, their dozens of kids, his entire wife's family, people that lived in his neighborhood, just everyone that knew him, knew that he'd be there if they needed him. Near the end, before the family convinced my grandma that he needed to be in dementia care, his personality was completely changed. My grandma was literally afraid of him. The man she'd spent 65+ years with, who was the safest person anyone could imagine, was suddenly unpredictable, volatile, and violent. Luckily, by then he wasn't physically able to do any real harm. although I can attest to him having weirdly strong resistance when I was trying to help him with something. I was on the school bus with a friend. We lived out in the sticks, so we're normally the last two at the rear of the top deck for the final 20-minute journey to our village. Halfway through the journey, a disheveled 35-year-old man gets on, walks up to the top deck, and sits at the front. Just him and us up top after the last town. Every 2 minutes, he gets up, walks to the next row back, and sits down. Then, he stops about 4 rows in front of us. He has his head down, and he is moving his hands and body a lot, grunting as he goes. Freaked out, we think he is some wanking pedo. My friend is an attractive young girl, so I grab her hand and motion her to run to the front and head downstairs. As we pass this character, he has a knitting needle embedded through his left palm, all the way through, and he is pulling it backwards and forwards. Christmas night out, quite a few years ago. We were all in a large bar. One of my colleagues was really drunk, not victim blaming, but it drew attention from a creepy guy. She was also really tiny. I was sitting in a separate group and noticed this man staring at my colleague. Not in a, ooh, she's pretty way, more of a predatory, sizing her up and shifting position so he could keep staring. He really gave me the creeps, but nobody else noticed as they were all messing around, going up for dances, the usual. I ended up alerting one of the male managers, who watched the guy and agreed he was indeed stalking our colleague. And he had a word with her pals, and they kept her close and didn't leave her alone at all. Scary guy clocked me and started stalking me instead. He even tried following me to the toilets, which were quite remote from the bar. Luckily, my manager and another pal followed him, so he went back to the bar. I was really freaking out, so I spoke to the bouncers and explained what was going on. Creepy man got kicked out. We could all relax. Except he started staring at me through the window. He looked absolutely furious, and I was even more scared. At closing time, I had to run to the casino next door, so I could wait inside for a taxi. The doorman was really kind and hid me from the guy who was staring at me through the door. He even escorted me to my taxi, and I got home safely. About a year later, the scary guy was front page news. He'd raped and murdered a young woman who he followed from a bar. I still feel sick when I think about it. This happened when I was younger, but my dad saw it as well, and we both still talk about it today, as it was really the only thing either of us had experienced as paranormal in our lives. Was in maybe 5th or 6th grade and had taken an overnight field trip to Colonial Williamsburg, a kind of historic town thing where a whole American colonial-era town is set up. Blacksmiths, bakers, and whatnot. Everyone who lived there also worked there as an actor. Getting back to the point though, we were riding in the tour bus into town, and maybe a block or two away, we saw a reenactment of a hanging going on at the gallows set up in town. There was a handful of period-appropriately dressed folks gathered around, and high up, hanging on a noose, was another actor with a white sheet, bag obscuring his face. Definitely wasn't a dummy, because we could see the guy squirming and struggling on the rope. Legs tied at the ankles, kicking, and arms jerking, despite being tied behind his back. We couldn't see any kind of harness or anything holding him up. It looked like he was actually being hung. It was wild to see that in a place that's mostly set up for, like, field trips. It was brutal. Curious about how they set up a safe hanging like that, my dad asked the tour guide what kind of harness or safety setup they had for the guy being hung. The tour guide just kind of looked at him oddly and was like, "We don't do hanging reenactments. The gallows are just for display." As soon as he said that, I got one of those spooked chills that runs up your back and arms. I looked through the bus's rear window towards the gallows we had just passed, and it was totally deserted. Not a single person there. No observers. No struggling hangman. No rope. My dad said he experienced much of the same. To this day, I, as well as my dad, swear up and down that we saw a man being hung and a group of people gathered around watching it. But when we look back, it was gone. I'm not a big believer in ghosts or the supernatural, but that experience has stuck with me for decades since. Hurricane Katrina. I lived in New Orleans my entire life up until that point. My parents were hard-headed, so we didn't evacuate. It was my mom, dad, me, my oldest sister, and my little brother. My oldest sister was 7 months pregnant. The way the water rushed into our home was surreal. We had to get on the roof of our house, which wasn't easy. And from there, we were on this adventure to just be safe. We slept in a school for 3 nights. We were rescued by Red Cross and put onto the interstate, where charter buses were going to take us to the Astrodome. That took another 3 nights. We witnessed so much despair and death. I saw so many floating bodies. The one that sticks out to me was an older, wheelchair-bound lady and her son. The lady was super sweet. My family would check on her from time to time and keep her company as we waited on the bridge. On the last night, the officers told us we had to walk further up the bridge because the buses couldn't reach us where we were stationed, so we all packed up and started walking. The old lady wasn't doing too well that day and was just moaning, "Please, Lord, take me from all this." As we walked, my family passed her up and spoke with her. She said, "You won't see me in the morning." I looked over to her son's face, and he had streams of tears running out of eyes. She told my mom, "You take care of those precious babies, and y'all fight like hell to get out of here. I'm tired and want to go home, so my son is taking me home." I was 15 at the time, so I didn't truly understand what she was talking about. She gave us a hug, and my dad told us to come on. We started walking again, and the next sound I heard was a hard splash into the water. I told my parents that the lady's son just pushed her into the water. My parents didn't believe me. The next day, we were all waiting around for the buses, and her son walked past us, pushing an empty wheelchair. My mom just looked at me and started crying. We all hugged and cried. It was the first time I saw my parents cry. It was all truly just sad. Katrina changed the course of my life, and I will never forgive those who had a hand in making that storm worse than what it needed to be. My life, literally, will never be the same. I still feel the effects of the storm to this day, and it has been 20 years. When my husband and I started dating, we were in the car on our way to an event. We were driving down the freeway, and all of a sudden, something smacked his windshield incredibly hard. So hard that the dome light turned on. We looked at each other wide-eyed and went, "What the fuck was that?" The windshield was intact, The only evidence anything had been there was a faint, dusty outline. For years, we called whatever it was the Loch Ness Monster, Nessie for short. It wasn't till later that I learned that birds sometimes die mid-flight and just fall out of the sky like a downed plane. So, I had my answer to what hit the car, but I'm not sure knowing that I could be smacked to shit by a dead bird at any given time is better. I had just gotten home from my birthday dinner, and I heard a really loud crash out front. Looked outside to see 2 cars had collided, and it was extremely bad. My roommate and I ran outside to help, and one of the drivers was pinned in his car, screaming for help. The other driver had suffered an internal decapitation. His head was just dangling from his shoulders by the skin of his neck. The combination of sights and sounds and smells was overwhelming, and something I will never forget. I live in a pretty rural and secluded area. When I was a teen, I used to go for walks all the time. This one fall, I started noticing the same truck all the time, which wasn't too strange at first, but did eventually start to concern me a bit. One afternoon, I was out for a walk with my headphones on, and I noticed the truck. It was driving very slowly down the road not too far behind me. I got in my own head a bit because I was listening to the song American Pie, and it got to the part, "This'll be the day that I die." It just tickled my anxiety, so I crossed the road and turned around to go home. The truck followed. This is a country road, and there's lots of offshoots onto other roads that lead to various farms. So I got off the one I was on and jogged to a nearby farm and stood behind a barn where I couldn't be seen from the road. I didn't see anyone at the farm and didn't want to move in case I was visible from the road, and turned off my music. It was an iPod, and there's no Wi-Fi out there. I couldn't call anyone, so I waited. The truck went back and forth on that road for about 20 minutes, then finally left. I hung out with some goats, which helped a little. Then I booked it home. After that, I didn't walk solo, and I never saw the truck again. I don't know if I just freaked myself out or if that was a potentially really bad situation, but it sticks with me and freaks me out when I think about it. Back in high school, the spoiled rich, cool kid had a brand new top, leaving a keg of shit-faced drunk, probably also high. Showing off on a country road doing 110, he went straight when the road curved right. There were 4 people crammed in that thing, none wearing seatbelts. The sole survivor was ejected, and only survived because she was impaled through her guts on a tree branch 30 feet off the ground. Rescue team had to bring ladders out into the woods to get her down. She was up there all night. I have few, but in college, my friend and I were driving home from a weekend trip. We stopped at a gas station off the 99, and I went inside alone to use the restroom. No one was in the store except 2 male workers. I asked where the restroom was, and one man pointed to a door on the other side of the checkout. I went inside the door only to find a large closet. Confused, I turned around, and the man followed me in blocking the door with his coworker behind him. At that time, my friend walked into the store and saw the closet I was in with a confused look on her face, and the man blocking the door grinning. I said, "What the F?" and pushed my way past him. I think he only let me out because they got caught. To this day, I don't know what would have happened if she didn't come in the store. One of my mom's drunk male friends cornered a 14-year-old me in a dark spot outside at a party, away from everyone, and pulled me in for the worst, most uncomfortable hug, and started saying how beautiful I was. I got this horrific feeling all through my body, that I needed to get the fuck out as soon as possible, and I did just that. That feeling, although a good gut instinct, haunts me to this day, like what if I hadn't pushed him away and ran off? I also felt like I was at fault, so I didn't tell my mom until I was an adult. I just made sure I wasn't around him. They aren't friends anymore. One of my nephews and I are less than a year apart in age, and we had to sleep in the same bed together once when we were in our teens. I remember waking up with the foot of the bed violently shaking, and I could just see enough from window light to see a black form at the foot of the bed. It looked like it had arms and was pressing up, down on the mattress very fast. It was about the size of another kid, but it was black and had enough form that you could make it out. I sat up, and my nephew said, "I see it too. What the fuck is that?" I reach over and turn the lamp on, and the form was gone. I'll believe, to the day I die, there was some type of being wanting to wake us up. Why? No idea, but it worked. We didn't go back to sleep that night.